The Jantzen family seemed like any other, caring, close-knit, and always ready to support one another. But one day, everything changed. Something happened within their home, something so shocking that even their closest friends couldn't believe it. Behind this mystery lay a series of events that shattered the family and left everyone around them in utter disbelief. Law enforcement, friends, and neighbors all tried to piece together what could have caused this seemingly perfect family to fall apart, and what exactly transpired behind closed doors. In the dense forests of British Columbia, among small, quiet towns with brick storefronts and cozy coffee shops, Randy Jantzen lived a seemingly unremarkable life. Langley, a small town many considered a peaceful refuge, had been Randy's home since childhood. But behind this serene facade were years of hard work and dreams that didn't always lead to happiness. From an early age, Randy shared a close bond with his father, who worked at a local lumber mill. His father taught him everything he knew about woodworking, and after graduating high school, Randy followed in his footsteps by getting a job at the same mill. The work was grueling, requiring long shifts and immense physical effort. But Randy was accustomed to such challenges. In Langley, many saw the lumber mill as a staple of the local economy, a way of life for most residents, and Randy was no exception. For over a decade, he dedicated himself to the demanding routine of processing wood and transporting logs. While the work was monotonous and exhausting, it gave him a sense of stability and pride. Each day may have looked the same, but Randy found purpose in the rhythm of his labor and his place in the community. If the lumber mill represented stability, music was Randy's escape, a way to express the emotions he couldn't always put into words. Music had been a part of his life since childhood, and over time, playing guitar and singing evolved from a hobby into a vital outlet. He frequently performed at a local bar in Langley, where townsfolk would gather to unwind after their own long workdays and enjoy live performances. On stage, Randy transformed. His usually reserved and quiet demeanor gave way to an engaging and energetic presence that captivated his audience. The locals loved his heartfelt performances, which radiated authenticity and passion, giving Randy a sense of fulfillment and connection that his day-to-day life often lacked. It was at that local bar, on a seemingly ordinary evening, that Randy met Laurel, the woman who would change his life forever. Laurel was 6 years older than Randy, working as a bartender, often watching his performances from behind the counter. Confident and charismatic, Laurel was beloved by patrons for her ability to create a warm, friendly atmosphere and her open, approachable demeanor. What started as casual conversations, first about music, then about life, quickly grew into a deeper connection. Their shared passion for music and mutual dreams brought them closer together. Laurel played the piano and, despite her life taking a different path, had always dreamed of pursuing music professionally. This shared dream, coupled with a genuine interest in one another, soon blossomed into something much more profound. Life at the lumber mill continued as usual for Randy, but now it was colored by the presence of Laurel. Their bond deepened as they began planning a future together. Langley, though comfortable, began to feel too small for the dreams they shared. They envisioned a life where music wasn't just a hobby, but the foundation of their future. Randy's days at the mill, nights performing at the bar, and evenings spent with Laurel gave him a newfound sense of purpose, love, and hope for the road ahead. Randy and Laurel often reminisced about the day they got married in 1990. It was a simple ceremony, attended by only their closest friends and family, filled with a cozy, intimate atmosphere. Live music, highlighted by a song Randy performed for his bride, marked the beginning of a life filled with love and shared dreams. A few years after their wedding, their daughter Emily was born, becoming the center of their world. Randy often proudly declared that Emily was the best thing to ever happen to him, and his love for her was evident to anyone who knew the family. Emily was just 8 years old when her life took an unexpected and difficult turn. She began experiencing sudden, intense headaches that were so debilitating she could no longer continue her musical pursuits. From a young age, Emily had shown remarkable talent in singing, captivating her parents with her voice and earning accolades in competitions. She had been living a vibrant life, attending vocal lessons and dreaming of becoming a singer. Her parents, inspired by her success, did everything they could to support her ambitions. At first, Randy and Laurel were at a loss to understand what was happening to their daughter. Visits to doctors and numerous medical tests provided no clear answers, leaving them in the dark about her condition. Emily had to leave school and switch to home-based learning because the bright lights and noisy environment of classrooms triggered more excruciating headaches. Her room became a dimly lit refuge where she spent most of her time. Randy and Laurel took turns caring for her, doing everything in their power to ease her pain and provide comfort in the face of her suffering. After extensive medical evaluations, doctors finally arrived at a diagnosis: migraine. It was a devastating blow for the entire family. The medications prescribed to Emily offered only minimal relief, reducing her pain somewhat but never fully stopping the attacks. The music she had once loved so deeply, her greatest source of joy, was now out of reach. Emily, once a lively and energetic young woman, became increasingly withdrawn, spending most of her time in silence and darkness. Randy and Laurel desperately searched for ways to help their daughter. They tried countless treatments, consulted numerous specialists, and explored alternative therapies, but nothing brought the lasting relief they so desperately hoped for. Medical predictions were grim. Migraines are often a lifelong condition, and many people have to endure the pain indefinitely. Statistics showed that about 53% of individuals with migraines are unable to drive due to their symptoms, 30% struggled to complete their education, and 34% face challenges with employment. While these numbers made Emily's condition medically common, they did nothing to ease her parents' anguish as they watched their daughter's vibrancy fade. These years were particularly hard on Randy. Music, once his sanctuary, became a painful reminder that Emily could no longer engage with the passion that had brought her so much joy. The evenings he spent playing guitar now felt hollow without Emily's voice to accompany him, and performing at the local bar, where he once thrived, no longer brought him happiness. He started spending more time at home, staying close to Emily and offering support as best he could. But as Emily's suffering worsened, Randy and Laurel felt increasingly helpless. Their once energetic daughter, who had been so full of life and determination, now spent her days confined to her room, avoiding light and noise. Though Randy continued to work, his thoughts were always with Emily, and each day he woke up hoping to find a way to ease her pain. By the time Emily turned 18, her condition had deteriorated further. Her migraine episodes became more frequent and severe, sometimes lasting for days on end. The unrelenting pain disrupted her ability to study and maintain friendships. Despite these challenges, Emily refused to give up on her ambitions. She enrolled in the University of British Columbia's arts program, pursuing a path in the fine arts with the dream of one day becoming an opera singer. For Emily, attending university wasn't just an academic endeavor. It was a chance to reclaim a sense of normalcy and move closer to the life she had always envisioned. Despite the physical exhaustion and constant episodes of pain, Emily pushed herself to stay engaged. She took vocal lessons, studied music theory, art history, and literature. She even participated in student events and concerts whenever she could, despite the challenges she faced. Her classmates admired her determination to remain involved in university life, even during difficult times. But behind the scenes, her activity masked a painful struggle. Emily often had to miss classes and catch up on her studies independently. The powerful medications prescribed to manage her migraines left Emily feeling fatigued, drowsy, and weak. Her treatment plan included triptans, anticonvulsants, and antidepressants to alleviate her symptoms. However, these drugs came with significant side effects: depression, trouble concentrating, and a general decline in her physical well-being. Over time, Emily began to avoid medication as much as possible to reduce its impact on her body, opting instead to explore alternative methods of managing her condition. Emily turned to meditation and breathing exercises, applied cold compresses to her head, and avoided triggers like bright lights, strong odors, and loud noises. Her room became a sanctuary where she could retreat from anything that worsened her pain. During the most unbearable episodes, she spent entire days in the dark, shielded from light and sound, while her parents, Randy and Laurel, took turns caring for her and doing whatever they could to ease her suffering. Even so, Emily tried her best to maintain a sense of normalcy. She kept in touch with her friends, though she couldn't see them as often as she used to. Sometimes she had to cancel plans at the last minute because of a sudden migraine attack, but her friends never abandoned her. They would visit her at home, spending time with her and offering support to make sure she didn't feel isolated. Despite the limitations her condition imposed, Emily refused to give up on the things she cherished. Her determination to return to her music and live a full life never wavered, no matter how difficult the journey became. On May 7, 2015, Randy Jantzen posted a message on Facebook that shocked everyone who knew him. In this post, he confessed to committing unthinkable acts over the previous 10 days. He began by writing about his daughter, Emily, describing her as the best daughter anyone could ever hope for, talented, intelligent, and kind-hearted. Emily brought so much joy to their lives, filling their home with laughter and always offering help to others, even when she herself was struggling. But her illness had stolen so much from her, forcing her to let go of the dreams she had worked so hard to achieve. Emily had been suffering from migraines since elementary school. The constant pain led to deep depression, and days where the pain didn't stop for even a moment became her reality. Randy described how his daughter would watch her classmates living normal lives while she spent her days in hospitals or in her dark, silent room. Despite everything, Emily tried to hold on to hope, dreaming of a better future, but nothing seemed to work. Randy worked at a lumber mill, but every moment he wasn't working was spent with his daughter. He told friends that Emily was his entire life and that he couldn't imagine living without her. Watching her suffer, unable to do anything to help, pushed him to the edge of despair. Friends recalled how Randy opened up to them about his pain, and it was clear how much he was struggling emotionally. One day, Randy made a decision that would alter everything. In a Facebook post, he admitted that he had taken a gun and ended Emily's life, explaining that he wanted to free her from the unrelenting pain. He wrote about how he pictured her as an angel, floating above the clouds, her long hair flowing in the wind, finally free from her suffering. He didn't stop there. Randy revealed that he had also taken the life of his wife, Laurel, stating that he couldn't bear the thought of her living with the heartbreak of losing their daughter. A few days later, he ended the life of his sister, Shelley, saying he didn't want her to live with the shame of his actions. In the post, Randy explained that Emily had tried everything possible to recover. He described her strength and resilience, but ultimately, the illness had broken her. He shared how powerless he felt watching her suffer every day, knowing there was nothing he could do. Randy had told friends many times that he would do anything for Emily, and in the end, he believed this was the only way to help her. After Randy published the post, his friends and acquaintances immediately contacted the police. They were horrified by what they read and wanted to ensure the safety of Randy's family. The post left many in disbelief, struggling to process the magnitude of what had happened. Law enforcement quickly responded after receiving multiple calls, including one from Brian Jones, a close friend of Randy's. Officers were dispatched to Randy's home to investigate. Brian Jones, one of Randy's closest friends, felt an overwhelming sense of fear and confusion as he read the Facebook post. At first, he hoped it was a mistake or some kind of cruel joke. But when he saw the signature at the end, a nickname Randy had used since their school days, he realized his friend had written those words. The gravity of the situation hit Brian immediately, and he knew he had to act fast. He left work early and headed toward Shelley's house, trying to reach Randy on the phone along the way. Each unanswered call only deepened his concern. When Brian arrived at Shelley's house, he noticed a stack of undelivered newspapers on the porch. This struck him as strange, as Shelley was known for being reliable and never neglecting her responsibilities. Her old van was parked in the driveway, and the curtains were drawn tightly over the windows. The yard was eerily quiet, with no signs of activity. Brian knocked on the door several times, but there was no answer. Everything about the scene felt unsettling and ominously quiet. Shelley had lived a reclusive life after their parents passed away. She lived alone, didn't have children, and rarely interacted with her neighbors. Her main responsibility was delivering newspapers, and she was known for being punctual and consistent with her work. The sight of the untouched newspapers immediately raised alarm bells for Brian. He knew something was wrong and decided to call the police. When he reached the dispatcher, they informed him that he wasn't the first person to report concerns about the family. A patrol unit had already been dispatched to check on the situation. At the end of his Facebook post, Randy had written that his family was now in a better place, free from pain. He expressed regret for his actions, took full responsibility, and apologized to anyone he had hurt. The post concluded with the haunting words, "Rest in peace, my little family." Reading this, Brian felt a wave of shock and disbelief. He had always known Randy as a kind and caring person, someone who loved his family deeply. The idea that his friend was capable of such an act, or even owned a firearm, was incomprehensible to him. He recalled how Randy always spoke about his family with love and devotion, and he struggled to understand how things could have taken such a dark turn. When police arrived, they attempted to establish contact with Randy Jantzen, who was inside his home. Officers spotted him through a second-floor window holding a firearm. They used loudspeakers and tried calling him on the phone, but Randy did not respond. The officers were acutely aware of how tense the situation was and knew they had to proceed carefully to avoid escalating it further. The house was surrounded, and negotiators began their efforts, but Randy showed no signs of surrendering or willingness to communicate. After several hours, the standoff escalated into something far more dangerous. Randy set the house on fire, and officers noticed smoke billowing from the upper floor. Attempts to enter the home were unsuccessful. The flames spread too quickly, cutting off access. Through the windows, officers spotted a body on the first floor wrapped in a sheet, but they were unable to reach it for identification. Within minutes, the fire consumed the entire house, forcing the officers to retreat. Firefighters arrived on the scene, but the house was already fully engulfed in flames, making it impossible to save. The fire was so intense that access to the interior remained unsafe for several days, even after the blaze was extinguished. It wasn't until May 10th, 3 days after the fire, that investigators were able to enter the charred remains of the house to begin their examination. Inside the burned-out home, investigators found 3 bodies. 19-year-old Emily was discovered in her bedroom, her body wrapped in a sheet. 50-year-old Laurel was found in the kitchen, similarly covered with a blanket. Investigators determined that both had sustained 2 gunshot wounds to the head, inflicted approximately 10 days before Randy wrote his Facebook post. Randy's own body was found in a second-floor bedroom. He had taken his own life with a firearm before setting the house on fire. Based on the position of his body and the remains of the weapon, it was clear that Randy had been in a state of profound emotional distress when he made the decision to end his life. When police arrived at Shelley's home, Randy's sister, they found her body in the living room. Shelley had also been shot twice in the head, her body similarly covered with a blanket. Investigators concluded that she had died 2 days before she was discovered, with no signs of a struggle at the scene, suggesting that Randy had caught her off guard. Emily's condition had deteriorated significantly over the past year. Doctors had resorted to administering morphine injections to ease her excruciating pain. These injections were a last resort, and neighbors often saw her parents helping her into the house after hospital visits. Emily had become so weak that she needed support just to walk. These moments were heartbreaking for everyone who knew the family. Randy Jantzen, Emily's father, always tried his best to care for his family despite the many challenges they faced. A year before the tragic events, he sought help from the family doctor due to persistent insomnia and overwhelming stress. He confided in the doctor about how difficult it was to witness his daughter's suffering. The doctor suggested sedatives and recommended that Randy try to get more rest, but Randy declined the medication, believing it wouldn't address the real problem. Brian Jones, a close friend of Randy's, recalled that Randy had never expressed any thoughts of self-harm or a desire to hurt others. He described Randy as a calm, hard-working man who was always ready to lend a hand. Randy prioritized his family above everything else, and no one could have imagined he was capable of such actions. However, Brian noted that Randy had reached his breaking point. He could no longer bear to watch his daughter suffer and ultimately made a devastating decision. Many neighbors who had known Randy since childhood found the events impossible to reconcile with the man they remembered. They described him as a kind and gentle person, someone who had never shown signs of aggression or cruelty. To them, his actions seemed born out of desperation and an inability to cope with the pain and anguish surrounding his family. One neighbor recalled Randy saying that if his daughter ever left this world, he wouldn't have a reason to live. Despite those words, Randy lived in the house with the bodies of his wife and daughter for 10 days before taking his own life. Emily's final tweet, posted 4 days before the tragedy, read, "I complain about the pain, but at least I'm here to feel it. I thank God for the chance to live." The post reflected her desire to hold on to life despite the immense suffering she endured. Her social media messages often conveyed her fight to stay positive in the face of her illness. She tried to maintain a sense of hope, even when her circumstances seemed bleak. Emily was remembered as a kind and compassionate young woman who worked to stay connected with the world around her. She had a passion for music and sang in the local church when her health allowed it. Many Langley residents fondly recalled her performances. As her condition worsened, her appearances at church became less frequent, but she remained thoughtful and giving. She would bake with her mother and share treats with neighbors, and on her better days, she even helped local kids with their homework. Laurel, Emily's mother, did everything she could to support her daughter. In one of her Twitter posts, she wrote, "Emily is back in the hospital, praying to God they can help her. I feel so helpless." These words reflected the pain and despair she felt while watching her daughter suffer. Laurel was on the verge of emotional exhaustion, but refused to give up, constantly searching for ways to ease Emily's condition. Shelley, Randy's sister, also had no way of foreseeing the tragedy that would unfold. No one in the family imagined their fates would be decided in such a devastating way. Over the last year, Randy often confided in friends about the overwhelming burden and stress caused by Emily's illness. No one could have predicted that Randy would one day reach such a fragile emotional state that he would decide to take the lives of his family. As mentioned earlier, Emily maintained a Twitter account where she shared her thoughts. Her posts showed that she wasn't giving up. Shortly before the tragedy, she wrote, "For the first time in 2 years, I've gone 12 hours without pain. I'm so tired of hurting, but I need to keep going." Her determination to fight, despite the immense challenges, was evident in her words. Randy, however, couldn't cope with the emotional weight any longer. Laurel was also deeply affected, watching their daughter's health decline. Her posts on Twitter mirrored her anguish. Despite their despair, the family tried to support one another. But the situation continued to deteriorate, and none of them could foresee where it would lead. Now that the details have come to light, it's clear how despair, hidden struggles, and a profound sense of hopelessness culminated in a tragedy no one expected. The story of the Jantzen family is a grim reminder that even behind seemingly solid walls, unimaginable pain can simmer beneath the surface, sometimes erupting in ways no one could predict.